Most chick content you see online shows you a mother hen with her chicks, and that's pretty much it. Which makes sense because that's the setup most people have. One hen, a handful of chicks, and not much else going on around them. But if you raise chicks inside a living, multi-generational flock, there's a whole cast of characters in the story, and together they all contribute to teaching those chicks. I guess when it comes to raising a chick, it takes a flock instead of a village. So today I'm going to talk about what actually happens when the rest of the flock meets new chicks. Who pays attention, who doesn't, who gets grumpy, and why my current hatch of chicks seems to be entirely unbothered by any of it. So before I get into it, a little bit of context about what my flock actually looks like right now, because the reactions I'm going to talk about really depend on the flock you've got. I have 20 chickens at the moment, not counting the chicks, because chicks don't count for chicken math. That's a bit on the light side for me. I'm usually closer to 30 chickens, which is partly why I did a double hen hatch this round, to bring the numbers back up. There are 2 roosters. Kowalski is old now and pretty grumpy, and he's also right in the middle of his molt, which makes him even grumpier. I'll come back to him. And then there's Astarion, who isn't exactly young himself these days, but he's the one doing the active rooster work. He could really use a hand with it, so fingers crossed there's a nice young rooster somewhere in this hatch. About half the hens are older, over 3 years old, and half are younger than that. 5 of them are in their first season of laying, so they're pullets. And up until this hatch came along, they were the babies of the flock. They had never seen chicks before, because the last chicks here were them. And just quickly, this is a different situation from integrating outside chickens into a flock. These chicks are being raised inside the flock from day one, so they're not being introduced to the flock, they're just growing up in it. If you are introducing chicks you've raised indoors or coming from somewhere else, you can check out my flock integration video for tips on how to do that. So the mother hen role is one I've covered before, and I don't want to dwell on it for too long, but just quickly so the rest of this makes sense. When a hen has chicks, she gets a boost in her pecking order status. It doesn't always take her all the way to the top, but pretty much any chicken near her will give her a bit of a wide berth for a couple of weeks at least. And really, any living thing near a mother hen tends to give her a wide berth. She's pretty serious about what she's doing. In this round of chicks, I've got 2 mother hens, Edna and Goldilocks, and you can see the pecking order thing playing out between them. Edna is a higher ranking hen than Goldilocks normally, and that's still the case, even with them both being mothers. A few of the other hens can move Goldilocks along, and she's more cautious around them. Edna just kind of glides around like she owns the place. Roosters still outrank mother hens though. They are generally pretty well behaved and tolerant, but they still hold the top spot. Astarion will move Edna away from a food dish if he wants it, but her chicks may or may not follow her. A good number of them will just stay and keep eating right alongside Astarion, which tells you a bit about the kind of personalities these chicks have. Okay, so this is where it gets more interesting, because the mother hen thing is kind of the obvious bit. The other hens are the ones that most people don't get to see much of, because most people don't have that many other hens. Broadly speaking, the other chickens in my flock do one of 3 things around the chicks. Some of them are indifferent. This is most of them. They're aware the chicks exist. They tolerate the chicks running up to eat with them. They carry on with their day. They're not particularly interested, but they're not bothered either. Some are curious. This is especially true of the pullets, the young hens who'd never seen chicks before. When those chicks were still in their hatching pens, the pullets came up to stare at them through the mesh several times. And once the chicks were let out, the pullets were a bit unsure about how to interact with them. They'd just kind of stare. They got used to them pretty quickly and started behaving more like the adult hens, which is basically tolerance up to a point and then a warning peck if something gets annoying. But that initial fascination was really lovely to watch. And then some are mildly intolerant. Kowalski, the rooster, as I mentioned, is fully in his molt, which makes him grumpy with everyone, not just the chicks. When the chicks came up to his feeding spot to try to eat with him, he pecked at them. Now these were Edna's chicks, the super confident ones, and they just kept on eating through the pecks for a lot longer than I would have expected before they finally backed off. Usually a chick will hightail it out of there the moment they get pecked, and if they see one of their siblings get pecked, they'll steer clear. Not this rowdy bunch. I am truly curious and a little bit terrified about what's going to happen when these guys hit their hooligan stage. One thing that did surprise me this round, both Edna and Goldilocks responded to any chick distress call in the first couple of weeks, no matter whose chick was calling. I had to scoop one of Edna's chicks up to guide it around a garden net it was getting stuck in, and it set off wailing. And I had both Edna and Goldilocks come charging at me. It was pretty intense. Now, chicks are very light and very robust. You can safely scoop them away from you if you need to. So I whisked this chick to the side and away from me. I didn't throw her, just sort of gently tossed. And the chick just sat there looking puzzled at its sudden teleportation to a whole new location. But it did stop making out like I was trying to murder it. Once it stopped calling, the hens wandered about looking a bit confused for a few seconds and then just left. I was quite relieved. I had visions of mama hen talons coming for my face. Let's talk about roosters and chicks, because people are often unsure if it's safe to have roosters around chicks. In my experience, roosters are generally pretty tolerant with chicks. Some are more curious than others, but mostly they'll just let chicks eat with them and be around them and not make a big deal of it. Astarion is very much in this camp right now. He's aware of the chicks, he knows where they are, but he's not interacting with them in any particularly warm way. He's just letting them be. Kowalski is less tolerant this time around, but he's in the middle of his molt. In his younger days, he was very gentle with chicks, so the grumpiness isn't really about the chicks, it's about him feeling a bit rubbish. Molting is hard work for a chicken, and he isn't actively being mean to the chicks. He's not seeking them out to peck. He's just telling them to stay away from him if they get all up in his space. I had a rooster a few years back who did something really lovely. This was before I started the channel, so unfortunately I haven't got any video footage. There was a hatch where only one chick made it, so she didn't have any siblings to hang out with. And when the mother hen finished up with her, which tends to happen sometime after the chicks are around 6 weeks old, depending on the hen, some hens keep going until it's embarrassing for them and the chicks. Well, this rooster kind of took over looking after this one chick. He spent time with her during the day and he'd roost next to her at night. It was really sweet. I haven't had that happen again since, but I also haven't had another single chick hatch, so maybe it's just a situational thing. What I want you to take away from this is that a good rooster isn't necessarily warm and fuzzy with the chicks. He just doesn't harm them. That is actually the whole job. And all the roosters I've kept have been fine with chicks. The horror stories you hear about roosters attacking or killing chicks are not the norm in my experience. That doesn't mean it never happens. It's just a very rare occurrence for most roosters most of the time. I mentioned the pullets earlier, but I want to come back to them because this is the part of the whole thing I find most interesting. 5 of my hens are in their first season. They were the chicks of last year, and this hatch is the first time they've seen chicks as adults. They don't have the experience the older hens have. They don't really know what to do. And what you see with them is kind of a learning in real time. They watch the older hens. They see how the older hens respond to the chicks, which is mostly tolerance, mostly ignoring, the occasional warning peck if a chick gets right in the way. And the pullets pick up on that pretty quickly. This is how flock culture gets passed on. It's not something I have to teach. It's not something the mother hen specifically teaches. It's something the whole flock kind of transmits just by existing and behaving the way they do. The younger hens learn how to be adult hens around chicks by watching the older hens be adult hens around chicks. And in a year or two, when there are more chicks, those chicks will be the ones the next lot of pullets are watching. It's actually one of the really strong arguments for keeping older hens in your flock, even when they're past their best laying years, because they carry the flock culture. Without the older hens, there'd be nobody to watch. So let me come back to these specific chicks, because they are not like the hundreds of chicks I've hatched before. Edna's chicks are ridiculously confident. They run at people looking for food, they sit on my shoes, they eat right under the beaks of all the other chickens, including the grumpy, pecky rooster. Their breed is New Hampshire rooster over brown hybrid layer hens, which is a mix I haven't hatched before. These are not chicks hatched from eggs from my own flock. This is what I call an external hatch, to keep the genetic diversity going in my flock over time. I don't think their breed is entirely the reason, but I do think it's contributing a lot. The personality of the mother hen matters a lot. The more chill and confident the mother, the sooner the chicks get confident. And Edna is very much chill and confident. A more nervous or cautious or just less friendly hen will pass that caution on to her chicks. But the bigger thing is just the system they're being raised in. When chicks are raised inside a flock rather than in a box or a cage, they learn from day one that the world is full of other chickens and most of these chickens are mostly fine. They don't grow up thinking every adult hen is a threat. They don't grow up scared of roosters. They learn that the worst they'll get most of the time is a warning peck, and if they back off, everything's okay. This is why flock-raised chicks tend to be more confident around other chickens, and it's also why flock-raised roosters have a much higher chance of turning out to be good roosters. They grow up knowing they're not the boss yet. They have manners beaten into them in the nicest possible way by the adult flock around them. The flip side, of course, is that the chicks do still have to learn those manners. Getting told off by an adult hen isn't a problem. It's part of their education, which is what I'm watching play out right now with these particular chicks, who frankly need more of that education than most. What I love about raising chicks in a big multi-generational flock is how little work I'm actually doing. I set the broody hens, I make sure the chicks get out safely, I keep an eye on them for the first few days, and then the flock takes over. The mother hens do the obvious work. The other hens do a kind of quiet work just by being there and being themselves around the chicks. The pullets learn by watching, the roosters hold the polite behaviour line, and somewhere in the middle of all of that, the chicks learn how to be chickens among other chickens.